Hey, today's Bible reading devotion is found in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. For 11 chapters, Paul has been writing to the Church of Rome, just discussing the mercy and grace that Jesus has given by coming and dying on the cross for man's sins. And Paul has just been describing doctrine after doctrine as we're talking about justification and sanctification and glorification and just things that God has done by coming and sacrificing for us. And here in chapter 12, Paul begins to write some practical application of how we as the church should live since we have experienced all that mercy and all that grace. And he starts out in verse 1. He's saying that we should present our bodies as a living and holy sacrifice. What an oxymoron to think about a sacrifice, because more often than not, sacrifices were things that were killed, things that were dead and disposed of or just got rid of, and that's how they sacrificed. Well, here he says that we are to be a living and holy sacrifice, that we, by the way that we live, we should be willing to sacrifice ourselves as we put on the attributes and the experience, the mercy of God, that we continually live in a sacrificial way, in a holy way, that is a set apart way, that God has chosen us to be different than anything else in this world to us, not because of us, but because of what he has done. We should be holy, and we should put those attributes on that he has given us to walk in a manner of this holiness, that we live this out. Why? Because it is pleasing and acceptable to God that we live for him. That we don't live for ourselves any longer, but instead we live for him. And Paul uses an interesting phrase in saying that that is our spiritual service of worship. And true worship is in awe of who God is, what God has done, and what God will and continue to do. To just be in awe of who he is. And Paul says, man, if we are truly going to be spiritually minded, if we truly are going to worship the Lord, we need to live as a holy sacrifice. That our lives should be sacrificing for God each and every day, and that we look like him, because he follows up in verse 2 of Romans chapter 12 by saying that we aren't being conformed to this world, that we aren't trying to fit into this world, but yet we are being transformed. We are looking different. I love the picture here right now of just kind of a caterpillar turning into that butterfly and just that transformation process that takes place. Well, I don't know if all of us necessarily, like me, are as ugly necessarily as a caterpillar, but I tell you, eventually we should look like a butterfly. Each and every day that we sacrifice ourselves and we truly sacrifice conforming to this world, and we are being transformed, starting with our mind. That our mind is being transformed into the will of God. That we are truly seeking his will each and every day, that we are putting in our mind and ultimately in our heart and then out in our footsteps and in our mouth as we speak for him, that we are a living and holy sacrifice. So today I want to challenge you with this. May you live in a way that doesn't conform to this world, but instead is being transformed into the likeness of Christ as you live for him.